one. Welcome to PJNet Live. It is Friday night, a night that is very special. Every night is special, just in a different way. I always say every night is special, and it is, just in a different way. Thank you, Hazards 4, for not only spinning some great tunes, but for your perspectives on current events. And we have Refugee standing by in our green room. And in honor of his Cajun authenticity, we have in the background the bayous of Jefferson County, Florida. Lake Miccosukee, where I spent a lot of my childhood. Roger, and we can say Roger now.
Or refugee. I'm fine with the refugee tag.
we're going to move at a fast pace tonight. QAnon. What is QAnon?
That depends on where you look, Mark. And I'm gonna try to do a future show on QAnon, give you a brief answer right now of what we know, and I'm gonna tell you why I'm interested in doing a show and why I'm trying to set up an interview with a couple of kind of YouTube stars that are big QAnon people. First of all, QAnon is a group of people or the people who follow it, or a group of people that are somewhat accused of being conspiracy theorists. They're certainly big-time Trump supporters, and they believe that the QAnon account that is doing these dumps of messages is actually a group of people of probably 10 or less that are inside the government, that are close to Trump, that are attempting to take down the deep state. Okay, I can say as much about it as that right now. Now, in general, the left has started to portray them as a dangerous left-wing racist terrorist organization. I can find no evidence of that. I wanted to see, because Trump's given him a couple of crumbs. Now, Trump's a funny guy. Trump will do things for reasons that nobody understands. Trump's
including him, I'll be able to say.
He's retweeted a couple of their tweets, and in one of his new campaign videos, there's some people holding up a Q sign in the background, which is what they do.
What is a Q sign?
It's how these people identify themselves as members of this Q theory, and these messages that are put out are put out by this anonymous group or individual called Q, and then there's people who follow it. So when they see Trump doing this, they're convinced that Trump is giving it his blessing. Now, it may just be that it drives the left so nuts, and that the left yells and screams so much that Trump sits there and laughs, and he knows, okay, I'm exciting the people that are fans of Q, and these other people are getting so deranged, and they're spending all their time talking about conspiracy theories and this and that and the other, and they're not talking about me.
Right.
But because when I researched it, I couldn't get anything neutral. I either found stuff that was glowing in praise of it for people that are true believers, or I found these hardcore attacks by the left. I was like, all right, I want to find out what this is all about, because Trump's definitely engaging with it a little bit. It's worth talking about. So just a heads up, viewers, we're going to do a future show on QAnon, and it's going to be as unbiased as I can be. I'm just going to try and lay out the facts of what I can find out, have what the supporters say it is, have what the antis say it is, and let you guys decide.
Now, we're going to touch on Epstein, not that everybody already has, but right. Go ahead and give us your 1 minute take on that.
Well, one of the QAnon accounts that I follow, and I would put a lot of credit in this if so many other people weren't doing it, but one of the QAnon accounts that I follow, the day before Epstein's death, said, hey, who thinks Epstein's going to still be alive in a week? And of course, he was dead the next day.
Do you remember when you said something about this 3 weeks ago? I said he's going to catch a bad case of suicide right here on PJNet Live. I said that.
Yeah, you did. And nobody's buying it. Now, let me say this. It's entirely possible that he was murdered by suicide. There was a great example of how you do that in one of the Godfather movies. And I mean, you turn off the cameras, you get the guard away, you send in somebody with a message that gives him the means to kill himself and says, hey, either you kill yourself tonight or, these 5 things are going to happen in the next 24 hours. These are the people who are going to be killed. Everybody cares about something. Okay. Even sociopaths care about something because they care about things that are connected to them. okay, and that they view as being extensions of themselves. I don't buy for a second that
a historical example that's actually true and well documented. The desert rat Erwin Rommel, for the Germans, was complicit in a conspiracy to overthrow Hitler. And he was approached and told that if he could commit suicide, they gave him the cyanide so he could do it painlessly. He said, and if you do, Hitler has promised that you will be given a state funeral. Hitler kept his word on that. If not, you're going to be put on trial. And you don't have to add much to that, because that would. So he did commit suicide and was given a very honorable, and he was an honorable man. He was not a politician. He was one of the best generals. He was right up there with Robert E. Lee. General Lee was one of the best generals.
Right.
Napoleon was not. Anyway, we're way off track. Anyway, but
I'll say one more thing on the Epstein thing before we move off of it, because this is the one thing that I'm going to say that not a lot of conservatives are saying. Okay, but it has to be said. I don't care how angry William Barr is. Okay, this has to be said. We are in control of the federal government right now, and he was allowed to commit suicide on our watch. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not elements of the deep state that have powerful positions that pulled this off. But what I don't understand, quite frankly, is why Barr or Trump didn't get on the phone a couple of weeks ago and be like, no, we got to get this guy out of here. This guy's got to be in an isolated, cell where absolutely nobody has access to him. We can't trust the normal procedures here, because we all saw it coming.
Well, the other thing I do is get some statements from him before he had a chance to be killed or commit suicide. Let me ask you this, and then we got to move on. Do you think this will blow over, or do you think something might actually happen this time?
Depends on your definition of blow over.
Well, it's news.
I don't think heads are going to roll.
Might be like a Benghazi. There'll be a big circus and.
Correct, but I think that still had something to do with Trump getting elected president. And I think people are getting more and more fed up. And I think that it's a drip that's having an effect on people. But no, do I think that this is going to be a major story and that somebody's going to be caught, fired, or prosecuted? No, I don't. I think they cover their tracks better than that. And I think most American people will move on.
Okay. You want to spend, we want to devote the majority of our time tonight on gun stuff.
Well, and specifically what concerns me is this movement towards red flag laws. It seems to be a compromise that suddenly conservatives are talking about, or some conservatives are talking about, as being reasonable. Now, I use the word conservatives right now to define members of the House and Senate who are generally identified as conservatives, not people in tricorn hats carrying around, Gadsden flags.
But wider than the Freedom Caucus. A little bit.
Right, and Marco Rubio has talked about common sense, red flag laws. At a glance, everybody seems like it can sound kind of reasonable. Well, there's a lot of reasons why I'm going to speak out against these, and why a lot of conservatives just instinctively react against them. But before I get into that, Dan Crenshaw, one of our friends, military hero, lost his eye serving in Iraq, elected to Congress, made some controversial remarks about red flag laws, got a lot of heat, and then tried to make it blow over with a video. And I think I've set you up with that video that was posted on Facebook.
Tell me when you want it to roll, my man.
Let's let it roll, and then I'm going to kind of give an answer to
3.5 minutes. Let's roll.
And war hero Crenshaw.
Wow, what a week. So, earlier this week, President Trump indicated his support for something called red flag laws. I stated on Twitter that maybe we should consider them at the state level. Maybe we should have a conversation about it, and it should be a conversation. Unfortunately, that's not what happened. What came out of it instead was hate-filled comments, lots of emotion, a lot of anger, a lot of memes. A lot of memes, by the way, which could be improved. Okay, but that's not the point. The point is that clearly even the words red flag law just emotionally triggered a lot of people. Made you guys really mad at me. And it seemed that no amount of explanation was able to quell your fears or convince you otherwise, and convince you that somehow the president and I had not betrayed you. That is not true, of course, and it's sad that many of you think that. It really is. But I did have some good conversations, some good private conversations with a lot of you, and this is what I found out. Clearly, when we say red flag laws, you guys stop listening. You can't hear what we're suggesting, because understandably, you automatically assume that we are just agreeing with the left's version of that law, and we all know that the left's version would not be good. It would not protect due process. But as it turns out, that isn't what we're talking about at all. At its heart, what we're talking about is the ability to confiscate weapons when there is clear evidence that violence is about to be committed. It's that simple, and this isn't that controversial. What is controversial is how that due process is protected, and I think that's where a lot of these concerns are. Making sure that due process could not be abused is at the heart of any conservative solution to the supposed red flag laws and our version of what those would look like. I have laid out specific safeguards that would have to be in place for us to support any type of red flag law. Okay, among them would be clear and convincing evidence, punishment for false accusations, right to attorney and cross-examination, and limited standing so that not just anybody can accuse you. For instance, not just a neighbor, not just an ex. It has to be somebody with standing, maybe a family member, or maybe only police officers. We've got a great study by Cato Institute that lays this out exactly. Here's the thing. I understand your fears about bad red flag laws. Red flag law is a general concept. There can be good ones and there can be bad ones. You should be against the bad ones, as I am. The whole purpose of what the president did and what I am doing in trying to start a conversation about this is so that we take control of the narrative and propose solutions that actually do protect due process rights and ensure that we aren't on the sidelines when Democrats are proposing blatantly unconstitutional laws that would not protect due process. Last thing is this. No one is saying this is definitely the solution. It's a conversation. I haven't come out in support of any particular bill or state law. It's a conversation that conservatives have actually been having for a very long time. It's not new at all. And it definitely does not deserve the emotional reaction it has gotten. We are better than that. Let's be better than that.
Okay, before you go in, I meant to say this earlier. That was a screenplay from Facebook that is copyrighted material and is presented here under the provisions of fair use for education and commentary.
I want to make my response to that directly to Congressman Dan Crenshaw. And Dan, first of all, thank you for your service. Thank you so much for your service to this country and the military. I have the greatest of respect for you. I also loved your campaign. I like your voting record. I love a lot of the things that you're doing since you've been up there. Let me tell you what's got me upset right now. First of all, before I even get into the red flag issue, you've been up there for a year and you're already starting to use the language of liberal elitists. Just stop. Okay, just stop. Don't talk about us being triggered. Don't talk about us being overly emotional. Just don't use that kind of language at all. If you catch yourself starting to talk like that, go back home, get out there with the people for a little while, get yourself inoculated before you get up back there to that cesspool in D.C. Don't let it have that kind of an impact on you. But the second thing I want you to understand is, because I know your feelings were a little hurt. You view yourself as a conservative, and you are. You've served your country. You're a patriot. You felt like you had an emotional bond with the people who voted for you. And then all of a sudden, you're getting lit up by them, okay? And you thought they trusted you a little bit more than that. You're like, hey, well, you know who I am. Don't you trust me? Don't you know that I wouldn't go that far? Dan, We've been betrayed by people we put in office for years.
Right. Okay, according to this, we just kind of froze up. And what I'll do is give it a moment to see if we can just rectify the situation. Don't know if we can or not. But this is the first time I've actually seen that video. And the points that are being made, I think, are cogent. If I go a little further, I will probably preempt what Roger was going to say. What I did is just disconnected him from the green room, and hopefully he will find his way back and with a fresh link. Let's find out. It's funny, we had a pretty good show in the green room. I won't go there because if Refugee is able to make it back, I want him to share the topics that were on his mind. I thought maybe now would be a good time to share with you, since we've got a lot of family here, PJNet family. Folks, I think we have hit something, okay? A couple things that we're doing. Many of our guests are making selfie promo videos the day of their show. They're very amateur. They're very spontaneous and organic. They're not scripted. They're not professional. And they're posting them on Facebook and Twitter. And I want to commend the PJNet. Okay, I think we may have Refugee back. And sorry to suspend that. And yes, but give me just a moment, and we will have Refugee back in just a moment. And because he's changed his name. And give me a second, folks. I'm working on this. There actually is a producer for the show. Me. I think where we got disconnected is you were rebuking Congressman Crenshaw to get back into his constituency, and basically he's being influenced by the liberal cesspool up there, I think is where you were going.
Yeah. So I think I went there, and I think I started to tell him, because I do think he was a little personally surprised at how quickly a lot of his base got angry at him, and he felt like they should trust him. And that's where I wanted to say, Dan, we've been betrayed again and again by people that have gotten up there to D.C. and moved left. Nobody ever gets up there and moves right. It never happens. Nobody gets to D.C. and becomes more conservative. People get to D.C. and they become more liberal. People get to D.C. and they become more elitist. We've seen it. We've had our heart broken, okay, a bunch of times. Repeatedly, okay. Why do Christians avoid the near occasion of sin? Because we're not perfect, and you're not perfect, and you are in the near occasion of liberalism. Now that you're up there in D.C., Dan, and you need to realize that, you need to protect yourself from it, and you need to take a rebuke when a rebuke comes. You even sounded a little bit condescending towards the end of the video, okay? You can't do that. You can't get up there and get infected with that type of elitism. But now that I've dealt with that, let me deal with the red flag laws themselves and why they're not necessary. Because there are some people that say, okay, well, surely crazy people shouldn't be allowed to have guns and go and shoot people up. We already have laws on the books that allow the courts to declare people incompetent. And when you're declared incompetent, you can lose the right to vote. You can lose the right to keep and bear arms. You can lose the right to sign contracts. Okay, but this is something that gets adjudicated first. Okay, there has to be due process. The next thing people say, well, but before the due process can happen, all this time goes on, and meanwhile they're shooting up schools. Not if we follow the laws that are already on the books, because you know what happens if you threaten people and the laws are followed, which all of these people have done before they've ever gone off. You get arrested. While you're in jail, you don't have access to your guns.
Could we entertain a concept of, during that due process, a guardian ad litem type person to be the steward, to be the ward until due process is complete?
Well, The reason I don't even think that's necessary, that could be, but the reason I don't even think that's necessarily necessary, because let's look at how this is going to get abused. Ex-wives and wives that are just very angry because their husband just cheated on them, okay, are going to call and make accusations against their husbands. Okay, they're going to call and make accusations. This is going to happen all the time, okay?
And those accusations could be factual.
Or they could be completely false. But guess what? There's already a system in place where if it's credible, you get picked up, okay? While you're picked up, you don't have access. So I have no problem if somebody has been charged with a crime, and while they are charged with a crime, it's something like you said. But I really don't think we need new laws for it. I think it's already there. Look, I have some mental health issues, so I take this personally. I have some mental health issues, but I'm not incompetent. And you know why else I take it personally? You know who has a lot of mental health issues? A lot of our veterans, a lot of Dan Crenshaw's brothers that return and suffer from anxiety and PTSD, but they are no threat to anyone. They're sometimes a threat to themselves, but they've never threatened anyone else. They've never gone out and hurt anyone, okay? Some of these guys already, I interviewed them on the old radio show, some of these guys already are afraid to go to the VA for psychiatric care because they're afraid of having their guns taken away. Okay, so they're dealing with their depression. They're dealing with their anxiety. Mental illness is a broad term. Just like everybody deals with physical illness at one time or another, everybody deals with some kind of mental illness at one time or another. You know, whether it's that they're obsessing over something, or they're depressed, or they're suffering from anxiety, or something of that nature.
Well, our mental health is a roller coaster, and where the line of mental illness is drawn is a very subjective measure.
Right. Well, you can use it if you call. I mean, look, a cold is illness, but somebody with the common cold is not severely ill. Okay, they have a very minor illness that's going to pass. Okay, and the same thing is true is true of our mental health. In general, I don't think that we need new laws on the books. Let's look at the kid that shot up the school in Florida that was posting things on Facebook for weeks, saying he was going to do just that, putting up stuff on Instagram of pictures of him with it. There were already the laws in place to pick that kid up for whatever reason.
And maybe we can use this as a segue to something you wanted to share, because our time is short. You know, I keep hearing from these social media platforms about community safety standards. Where was the community safety standards when all this crap was happening?
Yeah, I know, exactly.
And I've always said, if it's a safety issue, did you file a report with the police because someone expressed a political opinion or a religious opinion that they hold very dear? For example, you have had a Twitter account suspended because you quoted the Catechism
of the Catholic Church in the Bible. And in some issues, talking about homosexuality and other forms of disordered sexuality and sin. Okay. Now, I've gone in and gotten unsuspended because I know how to do an appeal, and I know how to write it in such a way that it gets up in front of a decision maker and they don't want the hassle. So they unsuspend the account. But yeah, the liberal minimum wage employee that first sees it, or their algorithm keeps suspending me. They don't like the word disorder and the word homosexuality together. They don't like the word homosexuality and the word sin together. Okay, they're very.
They don't like the Bible, then, do they?
Exactly. So no, I'll go in and I'll make it clear in my appeal. I do the appeal and I go in, I quote the Catechism, I quote Scripture, and I say, you are saying that Christianity is hate speech. You're also specifically saying that Catholicism is hate speech. If you suspend me, I will sue. I absolutely disagree. And then they're unsuspending me, but they're not sending a comment admitting they were wrong. And what they tried to get me to do beforehand, before I appealed, that could have gotten me unsuspended much quicker, because this takes a couple of days, is to just click a button that admits fault, that admits guilt, and promises I won't do it again. Okay. And then it'll be okay. But they warn me, but in the future, you'll be suspended for longer periods of time if you were to do it again. And so I know a lot of people that just don't want to get into the whole thing and everything like that. But we're talking about social media right now. We don't have a lot of time left. And I want to segue into one last thing, which I want to talk about something that I've done on social media and why. I've always had multiple social media accounts, including multiple Twitter accounts that I've used for different things. I've had accounts.
Now, when you say multiple, quantify that a little bit.
Okay, I have an account.
Just give me a quantity. 5? Are we talking about 50, 500, or 5? I mean, how much?
Personally, 3. There were more when I was actually doing the show and I had a couple people working with me, and there were other accounts that were kind of for the American Refugees website.
So at its maximum, how many accounts did you control?
Maybe a dozen.
I have a reason for asking. Go ahead. That's all I needed to know.
Maybe a dozen. And now I think 3.
Because other people listen to this and interpret multiple accounts as hundreds.
Right. No. A dozen at the most.
Which would constitute a botnet.
Right, and currently...
You know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know who you're
And
talking
we're not going to say.
We're not going to say.
But we both know.
Currently 3 on Twitter, and I used the 3 accounts for 3 different purposes.
Okay. Well, they were 3 personalities. They weren't just echo chambers.
They weren't just echo chambers. They were 3 sides of me, okay? And
the 3 voices in your head, right?
No. The Roger is Catholic account, for example, that actually had the name Roger Docking attached to it, but the handle was at Roger is Catholic, only followed other Catholics and was mainly only followed by other Catholics.
Okay, we get it.
Catholic discussion. Don't need to bring politics into that. Okay, the American Refugee account at American Refugee was talking about a lot of political activism that would have been very divisive. Well, what ended up happening is that a couple of people, one of them my spiritual director for spiritual reasons, said, when you're operating an anonymous account, he said, there's a little bit more. We talked about that whole idea of an occasion of sin. He said, there's less accountability on you, and it's easier to be dishonest or try to get away with something when it's an anonymous account. Yeah. And I think it would be healthier for you if you, at least, he said, I'm not saying don't operate 3 accounts. I'm not saying don't have 3, but if you at least didn't in some way attach your name to all 3 and let everybody know, hey, these are all me. And also don't have people that think they're praying for 2 or 3 different people or something like that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's sound advice.
That was sound advice. Now, there was one thing that he said, but you're really going to have to think about one thing. On one of my accounts, Mark, I've become a pretty open book. And I've really, really talked about some of the darker things in my life, some of the bigger problems. And that was a completely anonymous account. And I never would have talked about those things if it weren't being done anonymously. And so he said, what you're going to have to decide, and I'm not going to tell you which to do, is are you going to delete that account or are you going to attach your name to it? Mark, I decided to attach my name to it.
Wow.
Personal decision, but in my case, I wanted to do it as a witness. I wanted to say, yep, I've struggled with pornography. I've struggled with sexual addiction. I've studied with alcoholism. I've struggled with mental illness. These are the things I've struggled with. This is how the Lord has brought me through it, and this is where I am.
It's a little easier to do that when you feel like you're on the other side of them, and that's good to hear.
It is. So I just want, hey, I've got the at Roger is Catholic account. That's me, where I talk about Catholic stuff. I've got the at American Refugee account. That is me, where we promote this show and we talk about Catholics. And at New Orleans Raj, the longer name to that account is a perverted but chaste Catholic. And that's what it is, okay? Because it wanted to make the point that is possible. Now, I'm not criticizing other people that don't make that decision. Depending on the kind of job you have or the family situation you have, not everybody can do this.
Right.
I'm single. I'm not working for a boss. I've decided to make my life an open book and be a witness and just let everybody know, hey, all 3 of those accounts are Roger Dockan, New Orleans, Louisiana. I still love to be called Refugee as a nickname. It's it's still appropriate for this show. And just like your Coach Prasek and your Mark.
Right.
And
sometimes I get criticism because I really haven't coached that much. Okay, I mean, a couple of years.
oh, that's not true. You coach on this.
Well, yeah, coach football, but then I always remind them, Colonel Sanders,
Patriot Journalist Network,
right?
And I mean, what you did with such a small number of Russian bots, Mark, convincing people that there were thousands of Russian bots.
That scared the hell out of some people.
Oh, you scared the hell out of some people, Mark.
We lost everything we took on, but boy, we scared our opponents.
Yeah, we did.
Roger, I have to cut it off, folks. We are trying to shorten these. Now, we had some technical problems tonight, so we've gone a little longer than we intended to. But I want to let you all know that we're coming to a point where we're going to have 2 live guests every evening. And it'll be gradual. It won't just happen overnight. But I do want to make one last point. I was trying to make it while you were kind of disconnected. You have posted, and I have done the same thing and gotten the same results. But for everybody out there, and this is kind of a teamwork exercise, folks. If you post a link to a YouTube video, you are tweeting into thin air. I'm just telling you. YouTube is very flat. People don't tend to click on those. However, if you will upload a video directly to Twitter or Facebook, it will get 8 to 10 times the amount of views than if you put the same content on YouTube and then just furnished a link to Twitter or Facebook where you could play it right there. I don't know why. But it's a fact.
It is the case. It is confirmed it with me. Now, you can still have your YouTube account where your videos live, and people can go look at them later.
It's a repository where you can keep them all.
Facebook allows you a longer video online than Twitter allows you online.
Yeah, the default for Twitter is 45 seconds. You can actually do one longer, but you have to know the technique to expand the window to accommodate it. But here's kind of where I'm going, and this gets to coaching, folks. I have set up a public folder in the cloud that has all this stuff, and the intent there, and you have to use a desktop. You cannot use a mobile phone to do this. It's just not, the facilities aren't there, the tools aren't there. But you can play that video. You go to that link, the video will play. You can right click on it and save video as, just like you would harvest a photograph. And just remember where you saved it, and then you upload that video in a tweet or post of your own. And then Tammy has put together, I'm sorry Tammy's not here, kudos to Tammy. We are going to build that Twitter private message group, then notify the group that, hey, somebody in the group has posted this content. We can all then retweet it without crossing the line of duplicate or duplicative content.
No. That's all fresh content.
Mm-hmm. So this is a way that we can, it's not a high-tech solution, but we are giving you some technological tools to download the content that these creators have made, and they are very, I like them, because the selfie that you made today, Roger, is in the same genre. Where it's just very organic. It's not a scripted thing. It's just, hey folks, got a show coming up here, just taking a break. Very conversational. You put a little more hype in it than some do, but that's just everybody's got their style
in real life.
Right, yeah, that's your style. But I'm saying this is a more warm dialogue between the audience and the person in the spotlight in the video, the antagonist. So we've kind of gone over, and I also want to show respect for Steve Hazards, who's running the show tonight for videos. We will probably have to touch more on these subjects, but I just wanted to give you that quick update. Wrap it up, Roger, if you have anything else. So we'll revisit some of this stuff. We don't have enough time to go into all this stuff.
We don't have time to go into all of it, but just God bless everybody. I hope people are enjoying the show. I hope people are enjoying the growth of what Mark's building here at PJNet, because I see this turning into something powerful and fun.
Thank you, Roger. Yes, folks, we are. I mean, we've been swinging the axe. All of us have. But, folks, I'm telling you, some chips are actually starting to fly. I'm very encouraged, and I just want to thank each and every one of you who are here now live in our chat room. You have hung in there when there was really no reason to. Folks, we've had our butt handed to us, but we're still standing. We are still standing, and you know what? The stage has been cleared. Nobody else is out there, so if someone's going to carry the torch, it's going to be us. What a privilege to be a part of PJNet Live.